Day 1195 of the Ukrainian War Map, also known as the Russo-Ukrainian War. Juzzie here, and today is another update as I take a simplified and down-to-earth approach to some of the most important happenings on the ground in Ukraine. So starting off, we'll take a look at those Russian losses, as currently Russia sits on more than 989,000 military personnel losses, representing an additional 1,140 in the past day. Then as for hardware, 2 tanks, 7 APVs, 48 artillery, 2 air defense systems, and no aircraft. Although we very well know that to not be the case. Awaiting on those official updates, but speaking of those numbers, as we head back into Russia as the fog of war starts to settle, after Ukraine's security service SBU conducted a special operation dubbed Spiderweb, an event in planning for over 12 months, as Ukrainian intelligence stunned Russian defenses by launching 117 attack drones straight from trucks with retractable roofs parked near airbases, with the assessments on damage officially said to include, so far, the damage or destruction to 41 aircraft, successfully targeting 4 Russian airbases, hitting 34% of Russia's strategic long-range cruise missile carriers used to strike against Ukraine, and with estimated damage costs into the billions. Aircraft known to be damaged or destroyed include the specific confirmations of 10 to 12 aircraft, including 7 Tu-95s, 2 Tu-22s, both being the cruise missile carriers, an AN-12 transport aircraft, and an A-50 radar plane. For further damage assessments, some sites including Murmansk and Irkutsk require further analysis and confirmations, though we did very recently see some locals at the Belia airbase in Irkutsk take some footage of strategic bombers burning. Now, what you could really say of this simultaneous series of events from yesterday is what a gift for the world this is. Apart from being great for Ukraine, it's also a huge present for the United States Armed Forces, for instance, and the rest of the globe, as Russia and even the Sino-Russian alliance was just significantly weakened, and where one attack did more to limit Russia's nuclear capabilities than has been accomplished globally in the past 50 years, with Ukraine making Russia less of a strategic threat for Europe, the US, and other nations. And though we're looking at billions in damage, well, Russia is, in many ways it's priceless, as Russia does not build new Tu-95s or Tu-22 strike aircraft, among many other aircraft that found themselves in the crosshairs during yesterday's events. Instead, what Russia does is upgrade what's available in their existing fleets, with many of those production lines being closed down decades ago. It's also a series of events that has surely saved, for instance, the US taxpayer untold amounts in future spending because of yesterday's operation, as Russia lacks these aircraft in sufficient numbers to skirt US borders regularly anymore. This image is one of the many Alaskan interceptions by a US F-22 Raptor jet coming in contact with a Russian Tu-95. Now, having said all that, you could almost still guarantee Russia will perform another of these strategic patrols near Alaska at some point in the not-too-distant future to promote this image of being nil affected by these events. But it's just for show, because meanwhile, the remaining aircraft in their fleet will now have to double the workload for Russia's invasion of Ukraine, whilst at the same time performing their country's wider strategic flight duties, all amounting to running these aircraft into the ground even faster. Now, inside of Russia, and as for the technologies involved in this coordinated series of strikes on Russian airbases yesterday, the plan almost reads like an espionage heist. FPV drones smuggled into Russia. At go time, remote signals popped the roofs open, followed by swarms of drones zipping off to Russian airfields. Even more poetic, some of these drones were reported to use AI navigation and identification systems trained on museum and pieces of Soviet bombers in Ukraine's Poltava region, aiding them to distinguish between, say, a car and a Soviet long-range strike aircraft to zero in on. As for the Moscow response, well, the Kremlin claimed air defenses downed 162 drones and reported no casualties, with many attacks repelled, so they say. Clearly not the case, as this was an operation primarily carried out by close, small-range drones, with little in the way of the longer-range, one-way attack UAVs used in yesterday's series of attacks. The Kremlin did not disclose any losses of their aircraft, suggesting an intent to downplay the impact. It was also a bad day for Putin's sympathizers. In watching Russian mill bloggers go through the 5 stages of grief in real time, from denial to anger to bargaining to melancholy to finally acceptance. However, the lesser-equipped, high-profile Russian official Medvedev seemed to be stuck somewhere between the 2nd and 3rd stage of grief, because he tweeted right after the event, jumping into his usual ramblings, with the summary of the content being as follows: Russia blames the Kyiv regime and they will pay. Then he went on to, but we really blame the West for this. And then swinging back to Ukraine, stating, Russia will strike back at Ukraine when they least expect it. Although Medvedev, the deputy chair of the Security Council, should ideally already be aware that Ukraine expects strikes from Russia every day that ends in Y. Now, I'm moving along on the map to give these activities a break for a moment, which are activities which have since been followed on by a later series of overnight strikes into Russian territory, and where it seems Russian airfields aren't taking the day off, with Russia firms' satellite data showing large fires at an airbase in Krasnodar. Then also, within Voronezh at the Borisoglepsk military airfield, being subjected to UAV strikes by the AFU. Then Ryazan also saw its fair share of activity again, with multiple explosions reported near the city as Russian air defense systems engaged incoming targets. Lipetsk and Kursk also got their helping too. Beyond that, in fact, far beyond that, in St. Petersburg, where a fire broke out at another local paint and varnish factory. Always with the paint and varnish factories. Residents reported hearing explosions prior to the blaze, with authorities not yet having confirmed the cause of the incident. Then next to the main map, starting in northern Sumy, where the Russian army has been seen taking a break from moving head-on, instead edging west, widening their cross-border offensive, which involves an increased level of risk and resource allocation. The main highway, not taken yet, represented mostly in green here, is also the main Sumy road Russian forces travelled down during the initial invasion, quite some time ago now. Now, simultaneously, Russians have been performing a similar maneuver to the east, taking advantage of the natural protrusion of the salient-style border between the two countries, easier to see it when zooming out, with Russian forces over the border a number of days ago now, and where they would likely, or ideally, prefer to press downwards and cut off Ukrainian elements southeast of them. But as time has pressed on over the past few days, not much has changed here, with Russia, at least initially, taking the easy score, consolidating this position due to the terrain, with water bodies cutting off Ukraine from immediately defendable positions in this area. Next, headed to the east, where the mayor of Kharkiv showed a photo of a crater in the Kyivsky district, just north of the city, that was caused by a Russian ballistic missile strike last night. Minimal damage, no casualties reported, and resulting from either the Iskander-M or possibly from a KN-23 North Korean ballistic missile, which is of similar size and payload. Though it does appear that the missile lacked precision, hitting onto a highway, and the real question that should be asked here is, can Russia not at least aim these weapons at Ukrainian air bases, as opposed to civilian populations essentially? It wouldn't be as successful as Ukraine's activity from yesterday due to their military jets often stored in hardened aircraft shelters and well spaced apart, but even still, worth a try to make a more decidedly strategic military approach to the war after all this time. Is it not? Then headed further down the Kharkiv map, actually, this reaches to the northern borders of Donetsk, where Russian forces continued heading in the direction of the Oskil River, but not quite, instead to a river about 10 miles before it, as their army would likely seek to consolidate up to this line and expand north and south from here, with the more likely expectation of heading south, where the river really acts as a natural barrier and is where we really start to define the Lerman direction, at about 750 square kilometers of free Ukrainian lands to capture, until it leads up to the Seversky Donetsk River. Some of you may remember this one, which is the farthest point that the Russian army had once expanded to, again indicated in the green, during their initial Blitzkrieg invasion. Then to take a look around the map, but starting from a different angle with the case of Ukrainian civilians walking in the forest who came across several lost enemy drones. The Russian attack drones crash-landed in the forest instead of hitting their targets, and so outcomes like these have become very common over the past 6 months alone, with many Russian Shahed and other drones being downed in high volumes during their attack waves, and on some occasions they're downed at a rate of up to 40% per wave due to the electronic warfare countermeasures of the AFU. And as for why these ones don't explode, well, it depends on several factors here. Some lack a detonating charge designed as a means to overwhelm Ukrainian air defenses alone, whereas others that do contain those charges don't detonate due to jamming or GPS locks from the electronic warfare countermeasures, meaning they never get the receiving detonation logic needed, thinking that they're still on course and have only traveled halfway to their targets deeper inside of Ukraine. Next up, and to take a look far, far away on the map, where there's no sign of progress at Chongjing, where North Korea's much hyped but failed destroyer remains stranded exactly where it flopped on May 21st with its stern down, blue tarp draped, unmoved. Latest satellite images, although lower resolution from this passover, still show the destroyer looking like a beached whale with no real signs at all of repair work underway. The rear is still a disaster, propeller and rudder damage, suspected frame warping, and major flooding in key systems, including the engine. Hopes for what was to be a quick fix are long gone. At this rate, nobody should expect sea trials before late 2025, or ever. I'm so sorry, Kim. Then headed across to some news, where Russia now has a new paranoia. Trucks with drones flying out of the roofs, to be precise. With this newfound paranoia leading to thorough truck inspections on highways, causing significant economic disruption that creates long queues and delays, with already multi-kilometer long traffic jams that hinder the flow of goods and exacerbate Russia's pre-existing supply chain inefficiencies. This policing of trucks near the many airfields and other strategic sites around the country is truly an impossible quest to complete. And what starts out as simply paranoia for trucks could easily transfer into worrisome concerns for even smaller vehicles, including buhunka vans. So it's obvious to see that the Kremlin has felt the national security risks coming from the damage and destruction of their strategic bomber fleet losses. Also note, these highway stops and inspections are not just about opening up the trucks and looking in to see the back if there's any drones inside, because many of the drones in yesterday's attacks were hidden in the space within the roof of the trucks, with others hidden inside wooden cabins disguised as prefabricated houses, tucked away in roof compartments with remotely triggered launch bays. It's no easy inspection. It's the classic Russian approach as well, taking the reactive approach to events, perhaps not even considering what Ukraine has next in store. Oh, and it just occurred to me, what about containers on trains? You see, if you put on the paranoid mindset of the Kremlin, then there's no limit to inspections required to fulfill such an impossible task. Meanwhile, in a Russian display of law-enforcing competency, Russian media published a photo of a man allegedly involved in the drone attack on Russian air bases, 37-year-old Ukrainian Artem Timofeev. He was originally from Zhytomyr in Ukraine, lived in Chelyabinsk of Russia, and owned a car fleet. Well, this is all supposedly, as Russian authorities may just be looking to scapegoat here. Then to some more news, where the second round of Ukraine-Russia peace talks began today in Istanbul. Full bilateral negotiations were delayed as Ukraine had to review Russia's memorandum of peace document upon arriving, or at least asking to receive it after not being provided. That part is unclear at the moment. As for the talks, reports suggest no major breakthroughs occurred, with both sides exchanging ceasefire proposals but remaining far apart. Russia demands Ukraine withdraw from occupied territories and abandon NATO aspirations, terms Kyiv rejects as unrealistic. Expectations for a breakthrough between the Russian and Ukrainian delegations are low due to entrenched positions, impossible demands, and recent escalations, including Ukrainian drone attacks on Russian air bases and Russian strikes into Ukraine. Then, due to this unfortunate set of circumstances, although hardly surprising, head into a brief 5-second bit of humour to round off the video today, guys, as Ukraine's SBU, Ukraine's intelligence apparatus, after taking the credit for those recent airbase strikes in Russia, is starting to make an international name for itself, almost in the same way as the Israeli Mossad intelligence agency is, after their handheld pager kabooms. Because here, in a Telegram channel, one individual posted asking if the SBU is watching them, followed by the SBU, with a bit of a sense of humor, in a short reply, asking, today or in general? Instant classic. A lot of the branches of the Ukrainian army, the military, you'll find online have quite a sense of humor to them from time to time. So that's it for today, guys. Thanks again for watching. Please continue to like, subscribe, support, and I do hope to see all of you guys there in the next one. Cheers!